Say the word Hellmouth, and if you're over 30, your mind might drift to Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the halls of Sunnydale High. A high school library, some dusty books, and a wooden stake or two. But this real-life Irish Hellmouth isn't a TV set filled with extras and ugly vampires, but a limestone cave one can only access through a man-made tunnel or souterrain. And this entrance to hell isn't a portal to eternal punishment, but a portal to the other world, the Sidhe. It's where the physical and spiritual coalesce and is home to mythical beasts, bloody goddesses, and other terrifying things that go bump in the night. And every Samhain, the original Halloween, the barrier between these worlds dissolves, allowing an otherworldly woman and a host of nightmares to emerge from the darkness and wreak havoc throughout the land. This is why Oweynagat, or Cave of the Cats, is called Ireland's gates to hell. This hellish realm is home to none other than the Phantom Queen herself, the Morrigan, a bloody goddess of war, sorcery, and death, known for her murderous poetry that is full of magic, able to both heal and kill. While Sunnydale has its vampires, Oweynagat has the Ellén Trechend, a three-headed monster that emerged from this very cave to lay waste to terror. And instead of being a place to stop the apocalypse, Cave of Cats is where you go to witness it. Kid Miller Falcha, welcome to Cairn and Cloak. I'm your host, Tanya Lee, and over the next 20 minutes or so, we will unearth the legends and myths of this real world gate to hell. I do my best to avoid speaking to humans as much as possible. So, I very rarely get to use my Irish. If I make a mistake, feel free to give me phonetic suggestions in the comments. Learning is the greatest joy of my life. But if you're an asshole about it, Pog Mahoy, maar is fargel gebrishten na very klishta. Oweynagat, or Cave of the Cats, is part of the Rathcroghan archaeological complex in Tulsa, County Roscommon. It is part natural limestone fissure, part man-made souterrain, plunging 50 meters into the earth, nearly 164 feet deep. The cave itself is nestled in a cradle of verdant, fertile farmland. To reach the cave, one must pass through a kissing gate near a dead-end road, perhaps a kiss to death itself, as part of the journey. Picture this. The area is quiet, remote. You've heard of this mysterious cave. Treading through the field, your breath tightens. Fear pummels your chest, your throat constricts. You glimpse the ancient remains of a circle of stones lining the field. Across from the cave is a grove of trees blowing in the light breeze. You know you are walking towards something sacred, otherworldly. You can nearly imagine ancient peoples gathered in a circle, arms stretched to the sky in some secret rite that has been lost to the ages. Their chants, echoes carried in the wind, now long gone. Will the entrance be too small? Could the tunnel collapse, trapping you inside? Will you get stuck in the tunnel unable to go up or down. As you get closer, you see a long-haired black cat, tail curled around its legs, the tail's tip flipping lazily in the air. Yellow gold eyes seem to pierce into your very soul. The cat yawns a silent roar. You shiver. Once you get to the entrance of the cave, you breathe a sigh of relief. Shrouded by a massive hawthorn tree, the entrance itself would almost seem unassuming were it not for the palpable sensation vibrating through the air. This place is special, hallowed. While not large, you can see the entrance is wide enough for you to easily pass through. No one will be standing as they enter. You sit in front of the cave, legs extended in front of you to scoot through the man-made souterrain, a tunnel, the only way in or out. You have just enough space to sit down and scoot down the nearly 10 meters, 34 feet of tunnel as you make your descent. Before you begin, you glance up to see a stone with strange etchings carved into it. Those etchings are on an ancient alphabet used to write primitive and old Irish languages between the 4th and 9th centuries. The inscription reads, Freach Machine. It is the stone of Freach, son of Maeve. You wonder briefly who Freach might be. A great warrior, a son of the ancient Queen Maeve. The tunnel is muddy beyond belief. Your hands slide in the mud as you use them to scoot yourself left as the tunnel turns and you continue your way down. The tunnel itself looks and feels like a birth canal, and you are crawling to the womb of Earth herself. Within minutes, you drop down into the cave, the mud beneath you giving way slightly to the weight of your body. The light from the tunnel is dim, and the further you walk away, the darker it becomes till you can't even see your hands in front of your face. You've made it. You are now literally in the mouth of hell. This Hellmouth is home to some of Ireland's fiercest monsters, a menagerie of terrors. First, we have the red birds, the color of saffron. These creatures emerge from the Hellmouth, rising from the cave, searing the landscape with their poisonous breath. Anything their breath touched withered away in an instant. Their toxic fumes meant certain death. If you saw them circling in the air above you, you could only hope to God to escape and hide before it was too late. Next, we have the bizarre magical pigs. These could never be counted. The more you tried, the more they multiplied. But unlike domestic pigs, these pigs had powers that could starve a nation. As they trampled the earth, everything their feet touched withered and died. Crops, wheat, corn, and not even a single blade of grass they crushed would grow for 7 years. If released from the cave, these pigs could create famine and starvation, unlike any pestilence known to man. One's fortunes and livelihood may never recover. Even worse was a 3-headed monster called Ellén Trechend. If this creature was summoned from the depths of Oweynagat, the creature would lay waste to the entire island. This terrifying beast was eventually stopped by Morrigan, another famous Irish hero who bravely fought and killed the animal in single combat. Some archaeological sources say that this monster may have been part of ancient warrior initiation rites, a test of passage for each soldier to prove how brave they were as they entered the cave. As if that weren't enough, the evil continued with the daughters of Airitech. These 3 women were known as the Grievous Company. They emerged from the cave to rob and slaughter local sheep, but they didn't rise from the cave in human form. These sisters emerged as werewolves. And then we have the cats the very cave is named for. These weren't ordinary cats. These cats, 3 in number, described in sources as terrifying nocturnal cats, with skin so tough that a sword strike glided off their skin as if it were stone. These were not mere animals, but beasts of magic, used to test the bravery of elite warriors like Cocoon, who was the only one brave enough to stand his ground against them. We will learn more about Cocoon in future videos. But for those who don't know, Cocoon is one of the primary figures in Irish mythology and ancient literature. Beyond these beasts, we have a wider host of terrible creatures that swarm around Oweynagat. The entourage of hell, the Bledlachtana, monsters that howl from the cavities of the earth to signal the start of battle. Bachanach and Bananach, spirits that swarmed heroes such as Cocoon, increasing their hero heat to terrify the warriors' enemies. The Glitty-Glinny, wild female entities that join demonic phantom hosts known to hover over battlefields. Demons of air, or Dimnair, that accompanied war goddesses to incite slaughter. Specters that gathered to enjoy the carnage of battle called and Airitech, and otherworldly cattle stolen by the Morrigan herself. These cattle were imbued with supernatural powers, and their presence in the cave is significant because it bridges the gap between the ancient Iron Age Celtic economy and the otherworldly mysteriousness of the sheep. One of the more unsettling stories of the cave takes place during the festival of Samhain, the original Halloween. Samhain marked the first day of the native Irish year, a threshold time where the veil between the human world and the other world is at its thinnest. It is a time where chaos and order are in their greatest conflict, when prophetic utterances could be sought and offerings to the fairies were made in appeasement. It was a time when the demonic forces and spirits could freely roam. In this story, Nera, legendary warrior Connacht, was challenged by King Ellén, the husband of the warrior Queen Maeve, who ruled Connacht in the Ulster cycle of Irish mythology. He challenged him to perform a feat so daring and brave that most would not have wished to accept the challenge. The king dared Nera to tie a withe, a tough, flexible branch from a willow tree, to the foot of a man that had been hung the day before. Why was this challenge? Because he was asked to do it alone at night, on Samhain, when the dead could rise and all manner of beasts could be unleashed from the cave. Any manner of spirit could overwhelm and overtake the warrior. Many had attempted it, but fled in terror when they heard the screeching demonic hosts. One could only imagine the terror Nera faced, knowing what the cave held, and knowing the power that could be unleashed on him as he attempted the feat. The sounds of screeching, the birds, the 3-headed beast, maybe all this and more was in the back of Nera's mind as he crept up to the swinging corpse. Nera looked into the face of the dead man, face waxy and blanched. The hanged man's tongue protruded from his lips, his neck unusually elongated from the pressure of the rope. The smell that crept into his nostrils as he edged closer was pungent, heavy. He could almost feel the sensation of the smell clinging to the back of his own throat. The dead man's stomach was bloated and a slight rotten egg smell, something metallic too, seemed to be mingling with the sickly sweet smell of his putrefacting flesh. Nera's stomach lurched. He'd seen dead men before, but alone, at night, on Samhain, it hit differently. He stood in front of the man, bent down and reached for his foot. In the distance, he heard a howling screech. The hairs on the back of his head stood at end, and he hesitated for the briefest of moments. When he touched the foot of the corpse, it was swollen, purple. The skin felt cold and slick to the touch. The foot was stiff, and he struggled to wrap the wrist around the man's foot. It kept falling off, and he had to work repeatedly to get it to stay in place. The chore of tying the branch around the foot narrowed his vision and presence of mind. He was now solidly deep into the task at hand. The dead man spoke. Startling Nera. The corpse told Nera that the width wouldn't stay placed unless he did it right, and then gave him instructions on how to do it. This bizarre interaction with a dead man felt out of body, but Nera was determined. So he did what the dead man said. He followed the instructions and tied the width to the corpse's foot. The dead man complained of thirst. Out of compassion, Nera cuts the rope and carries the corpse to find water, then returns him to the gallows. On his way back to the palace, the stench of the corpse still with him, he saw an otherworldly host emerge from Oweynagat. They swarmed the palace and set it on fire. The horde then slaughtered everyone inside, leaving behind a great pile of severed heads. In horror, he followed the host back to the cave. Once in the cave, he discovered a lush, beautiful summer day. Even though outside it was the start of the dark winter season, the inhabitants, upon finding Nera, captured him and forced him to stay. He made a home there, fell in love, and married an inhabitant of the sheep. At some point, his wife confided in him the horrible scene he'd seen. It wasn't real. It was just a vision of what would happen next Samhain if he didn't want Queen May. Nera gathered plants from the other world, wild garlic, primrose, and golden fern, evidence that he had truly seen his vision and had been in the Cave of Cats. He raced to the timber hall and looked across the crowd at many of his fellow soldiers. Warm light glancing off faces, steam rising from damp wool cloaks drying near the fire. The hall was noisy. Dozens of soldiers scraped iron heads of their spears against whetstones while laughing and telling stories. The air was thick with peat smoke and the scent of roasting meat. He called out to the crowd. They silenced to hear the words of their trusted friend in arms. He told them of his challenge and the vision he had, showing the evidence from his time in the cave. Enraged, the hall erupted. Warriors rose in anger. They cinched their lanics or tunics tight, pulling the fabric high over the leather belts to create thick protective pleats. Then came the brats, a heavy, rhythmic whomp of lanolin-rich wool as dozens of cloaks were flung over shoulders, followed by the frantic scrape of penannular brooches pinning them into place. Near the massive timber doors, the ritual of the war clean began. Men dipped their hands into stone basins of white lime slurry, raking the thick paste through their hair. In the flickering firelight, their soft braids transformed into jagged, bone-white ridges, a skeletal mane designed to invoke terror. They seized torches of dried bogwood, the resinous animal fat hissing as it caught the flame. As they stormed from the palace, the Hellmouth beckoned. The army became a luminous serpent winding its way through the tall, wet grass. Dripping sparks from their torches falling to the earth. The iron of their spears felt cold as earth. Their hearts were hardened. They were no longer men. They were the host of Connaught, ready to storm the sheep. At the mouth of the cave, the host halted. They raised their rawhide shields to their faces, the rims masking their mouths. A low guttural hum began, a vibrating thrum that continued in pitch until the very limestone of Oweynagat seemed to groan. This was the veritas, an acoustic hammer designed to shatter the nerves of the sheep. One by one, the warriors vanished into the muddy throat of the cave. They plowed forward, rawhide-bound shields first, shoving the bronze bosses into the pale faces of the waiting enemy. In the cramped dark, there was no room for a swing. They used short choke spears to find the gaps in the sheep's armor. Then the champions moved. Performing the salmon leap, they vaulted over the hunched shoulders of the front line, kicking against the weeping stone walls to bring their iron leaf-shaped blades down from the shadows of the ceiling. As the pile of the dead grew, the chamber floor turned into a treacherous mire of ochre mud and hot blood. The gate to hell was a slaughterhouse, and the host could not won. After the battle, Nera, longing for his wife, returned to the cave, where it said he remains until the time of doom. In 2024, access to the site has been restricted due to toxic fumes within the cave. It's interesting to consider that since 2021, there have been multiple incidents of people defacing sacred sites across Ireland. Monuments more than 5,000 years old. In particular, the Leah Fall was defaced in 2023. This stone, located on the Hill of Terror, was one of 4 royal sites that exist. It also has connections to the Morrigan. If you recall from the beginning of the video, the Morrigan is said to live in the cave with the birds that have toxic breath. Is it just a coincidence, then, that the cave is closed for toxic fumes? Could the cave itself be awakening an anger, a response to the desecration of such sacred sites? Are the birds beginning to rise again? Is the Morrigan stirring to exact revenge? Maybe. Maybe not. But it does give one pause, and it's interesting to think on. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Cave of Cats and the retelling of Nera's challenge. Our next video, we will be talking more about the Morrigan and learning about Ross, the poetry that she can use to kill. Oweynagat. Thank you for spending time with us here at Cairn and